Beggar twins carry bricks on construction site to survive. But what a young billionaire does when he sees them shocks everyone. The sun hadn't quite risen when Hazel opened her eyes. First, she felt the cold, then the hardness of the ground, and only then did she see where she was. Under pieces of cardboard in an alley between two buildings. Beside her, Marley was still asleep, curled up like a small cat. "Wake up," Hazel nudged her sister. "We have to go before someone shows up." Marley opened her eyes, the same brown eyes as Hazel, on the same thin face, with the same tangled dark hair. It wasn't just their faces that were identical. They were both the same size and the same age, 7 years old, and had the same problem, the gnawing hunger in their bellies. "I'm hungry," Marley murmured, sitting up and rubbing her eyes. "I know, me too," Hazel replied, folding the cardboard they used as a blanket. It was important to keep it properly. It was all they had. They stood up, shaking the dust off their worn clothes, shorts that used to be a different color, oversized t-shirts. They had no backpacks, no toys, no place to go. They only had each other. "Where are we going today?" Marley asked, looking at the street that was beginning to get busy. Hazel didn't answer right away. Her gaze swept across the avenue, the people walking quickly, the cars passing by. No one looked at them. It was as if they were invisible. "There," Hazel pointed across the street. "There's a new place." Across the street, a lot surrounded by hoardings showed the beginning of a construction site. Men in hard hats went in and out. Trucks unloaded materials. It was a place full of movement, full of work. Maybe it was a place with food. The two crossed the street together, always holding hands. They learned early that it was dangerous to separate. The world was too big for small children, and they knew it better than many adults. At the entrance of the construction site, a man with a gray beard checked a list. He didn't notice the girls until they were right in front of him. "What do you want?" he asked without smiling. Hazel stepped forward. She was always the one who spoke. "Can we help? Carry things? We're strong." The man frowned, observing the two. They were so small they looked even smaller in those oversized clothes. "You're too small to work here," he said, but he didn't send them away. "We can carry bricks," Hazel insisted. "Can you pay us a few pennies, just to buy food? We're really hungry." The man looked around, as if checking if anyone was watching. Then he sighed. "Come in, stay near that pile of bricks. Take them to that corner over there. Then I'll see what I can get for you." The girls didn't thank him, not with words, but their eyes shone in a way that was both hope and relief. They walked through the gate as if entering a familiar place, despite never having been there. The first brick seemed impossible to lift. Heavy, rough, difficult to hold with such small hands. Hazel tried first, holding it with both hands. She almost fell backward but managed to balance herself. "Come on, Marley, you grab it too." The two carried the first brick together, short and careful steps, to the indicated spot. Then they returned. They picked up another and another and another. The sun rose in the sky, strong and hot. Sweat ran down the girls' and faces, mixing with the dust and dirt. Their arms ached. Their unprotected hands began to turn red and bruised, but they didn't stop. No one spoke to them. The workers passed by, sometimes glancing sideways, but soon returned to their tasks. It was as if the twins were just two more tools on the construction site, small, silent, almost unnoticed. Noon, the sun directly overhead. The workers stopped for lunch. They sat in the shade, opened their lunch boxes and laughed at jokes the girls didn't understand. The smell of food made Marley's stomach rumble so loudly that Hazel looked at her worriedly. "We'll eat soon," she whispered, holding her sister's hand. The man from the entrance appeared. He brought 2 loaves of bread and a bottle of water. It wasn't much, but for those who hadn't eaten since the day before, it was a treasure. "Here," he said, handing them the food. "Rest for a bit, then continue." The girls sat on the ground, in a secluded corner. They carefully divided the bread into equal parts, as they always did with everything. They ate slowly, savoring each bite, drinking water little by little. "Do you think we'll get more food today?" Marley asked softly. "Yes, if we work hard." There was no certainty in Hazel's voice, only determination. She knew the world didn't offer guarantees for children like them, but she also knew that stopping was not an option. The afternoon brought more bricks, more sun, more tiredness. Their small hands now had blisters, their arms trembled, but they continued side by side without complaining. The workers began to put away their tools. The day was ending. Hazel and Marley looked at the pile they had carried. It wasn't large for an adult, but for two 7-year-old children, it was a mountain. The man returned. He assessed their work with critical eyes. "You truly are strong," and he said, and for the first time, there was something like admiration in his voice. He took some coins and a small package from his pocket. "Here, some change for your work, and this was left over from lunch." Hazel took everything, putting the coins into her torn pocket. The package contained a piece of bread with cheese and a bit of meat. It wasn't much, but it meant they wouldn't go to sleep hungry. "Can we come back tomorrow?" she asked. "We need more change to buy food." The man hesitated, then nodded. "You can, but be careful out there." The two left the construction site as they had entered, hand in hand, invisible to most passers-by. The sky was beginning to darken. It was time to find a place to sleep. "Where are we staying tonight?" Marley asked. Hazel looked around. She knew the streets well. She knew where it was dangerous, where it was more or less safe. "In that park. There's a bench behind the trees. Almost no one goes there." They walked in silence, too tired to talk. When they reached the park, they sat on the bench. They shared the sandwich, eating with the same calmness as before, savoring every taste. Night fell completely. The city lit up, but not for them. Their world was dark, cold, hard. Hazel hugged Marley, who was already starting to drift off to sleep. "Tomorrow will be better," she whispered, but she didn't know if she believed it. She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her sister against her shoulder. They had no blanket, no bed, nothing but that bench and each other. But for now it was enough to survive until the next day. For two children with empty hands and almost always empty stomachs, surviving one day was already a victory. Logan Hart didn't usually walk the streets of that neighborhood. His days were normally divided between meetings in mirrored conference rooms, lunches at expensive restaurants, and travel in private jets. As the founder and CEO of Hart Technologies, he had turned an idea into a billion-dollar empire before the age of 35. The whole world knew his name, his company, his fortune. But that morning, Logan wanted to walk. Simply walk, without a driver, without assistance, without a schedule. There was something in the city he hadn't seen in a long time. The reality beyond the tinted glass windows of his limousine. Wearing jeans, sneakers, and a simple shirt, he could have been just another man walking down the sidewalk. The watch on his wrist and his sunglasses were the only clues that he wasn't an ordinary worker heading to his job. Logan turned a corner and saw the construction site. Nothing special, just another building going up in the constantly growing city. He was about to continue on his way when something caught his eye. Two small girls were carrying bricks. They weren't teenagers, they were children, so small that the bricks seemed to take up half their bodies. They were identical, the same disheveled dark hair, the same oversized clothes, the same dirty, determined faces. Logan stopped. He watched. They picked up a brick, balanced it with difficulty, took slow and careful steps, placed it in the indicated spot, and returned to pick up another. Their hands were red, their arms trembled with the effort, but they didn't stop. Something inside him, something he didn't know existed, awakened with an overwhelming force. Without thinking twice, Logan crossed the street and entered the construction site. A security guard tried to stop him, but he didn't even look at the man. His eyes were fixed on the two children who were now bending down to pick up another brick. "Hey, you can't just walk in like that," the security guard shouted, but Logan kept walking. Some workers looked curious. The site supervisor came towards him with an expression that meant business. "Sir, this is a workplace. You need to identify yourself or leave." "Who's in charge here?" Logan asked, ignoring the warning. "I'm the foreman, Frank Miller." "What do you want?" Logan pointed to the girls, who were now watching the scene, motionless, with a brick between them. "What are those children doing carrying bricks? How old are they? 7? 8? Frank Miller looked at the twins, then back at Logan. They came, asked for work. They needed money for food. And you thought it was appropriate to have children carry heavy loads. Do you have any idea what that does to their bodies, to their backs, their arms? Logan's voice was low, controlled, but it carried an authority that made the foreman step back. Look, Children shouldn't have to work for food, Logan cut in, and now his voice was loud enough for everyone on the site to hear. This is wrong. It's illegal. It's inhumane. Without waiting for a response, Logan walked up to the girls, who remained still, observing everything with attentive, alert eyes. As he approached, he noticed how small they were, how fragile they seemed, despite the strength they showed, how their eyes, so identical, held a glimmer that mixed fear and caution. Logan knelt before them, bringing himself to their eye level. He smiled, trying to appear as unthreatening as possible. Hi, my name is Logan. What are your names? The girls exchanged glances. It was the one on the left who answered. I'm Hazel, she's Marley. Nice to meet you, Hazel and Marley. Have you been working here long? Since this morning, Marley replied, her voice almost a whisper. Logan observed their hands. They were bruised, with blisters beginning to form. Are you hungry? They didn't answer, but their eyes said everything. So come with me, Logan said, extending his hands to them. I'll take you to get something to eat. The girls didn't move. Hazel stepped forward, as if protecting her sister. We don't know you. Logan nodded. It was a good sign. They were cautious. You're right to be careful, but I promise I only want to help. There's a diner just around the corner. We can go there, you eat whatever you want, and then you decide if you want my help or not. What do you think? Hazel looked at Marley, in a silent conversation that seemed to need no words. After a few seconds, she looked back at Logan. Okay, but we stay together. Of course, Logan agreed. You always stay together, don't you? Hazel nodded, and there was something in her gaze, a kind of relief at being understood, that made Logan feel a lump in his throat. He stood up and waited for them to drop the brick. Frank Miller watched from a distance, not intervening. Logan gave him one last stern look before leaving the site with the twins, one on each side. People on the sidewalk looked on, curious. A well-dressed man with two dirty, ragged children was not a common sight. Logan ignored the stares and led the girls to the diner on the corner. It was a simple place, with formica tables and padded booths. The air smelled of coffee and fried food. A waitress came to serve them as soon as they entered. Table for 3, she asked, looking curiously at the girls. Yes, please, Logan replied, preferably one that's more private. The waitress led them to a table in the back, away from the windows. Logan let the girls choose where to sit. They sat side by side and on the same bench, as if they needed each other's contact to feel safe. What would you like to eat? Logan asked, handing them the menus. Hazel looked at the menu carefully. Marley did the same. Logan noticed they could read, at least enough to understand a menu. Can we order anything we want? Hazel asked, cautiously. Of course. Whatever you want. When the waitress returned, Hazel ordered a hamburger with fries for each of them and 2 chocolate milkshakes. Logan only ordered a coffee. As they waited, an uncomfortable silence settled. The girls looked around, observing every detail of the diner, every person who entered and left. Logan watched them, noting their synchronized movements, the way they seemed to communicate without words. You're twins, aren't you? He asked, trying to start a conversation. Yes, Hazel replied. Identical twins. We were born on the same day. How old are you? 7. Logan felt something tighten in his chest. 7 years old. 7-year-old children shouldn't be carrying bricks on construction sites. They shouldn't be dirty and bruised. They shouldn't have that look, a look he had seen in many adults who had faced too much. The food arrived. The girls looked at the plates with an intensity that told Logan more than any words could, but they didn't attack the food as he expected. Instead, they looked at each other, then at Logan, as if asking for permission. You can eat, he said softly. It's all for you. They began to eat. Slowly at first, almost ceremoniously, but soon hunger spoke louder. Big bites, hurried gulps, as if they feared the food might disappear at any moment. Logan watched in silence, drinking his coffee, giving them the time and space they needed. When they finished, completely clearing their plates, Logan noticed that their faces were different. A little color had returned to their cheeks, and there was something like satisfaction in their eyes. "Was it good?" he asked. "Yes," Marley replied, and Logan noticed it was the first time she had spoken directly to him. "Thank you." "You're welcome. Do you want anything else? Dessert?" The two exchanged glances again. In that silent conversation they seemed to master so well. "No, thank you," Hazel answered for both. "We're full." Logan nodded and took a sip of his coffee. It was time for more difficult questions, but he didn't know how to start. Do you have parents? Someone who takes care of you?" The girls were quiet for a moment. It was Hazel who spoke, her voice steady, without a tremor. "They died. We've been living on the streets for a long time." "We've been living on the streets for a long time," Marley added. "Dad, we take care of each other." Logan expected tears, or at least some sign of emotion, but there was none of that. The girls spoke about their parents, death, and living on the streets, with the same calm an adult would talk about the weather. They conducted the conversation with impressive control, as if they had rehearsed what to say, how to say it, what to reveal, and what to keep to themselves. "I'm sorry," Logan said, and he truly was. Do you have other relatives? Aunts, uncles, grandparents, anyone?" "No," Hazel replied, "just us." "And where do you sleep? How do you survive?" "We find places," Marley said. "There's a park with a good bench. There's a gap between two buildings where it hardly rains inside. There's an old lady who sometimes gives us bread. And when it gets cold, we gather cardboard," Hazel explained. "Cardboard is good for the cold. And we stick together." There was a wisdom in their words that didn't match their ages, a wisdom born of hardships that children should never have to face. Logan felt something change within him, something deep, definitive. Would you like to have a place to stay, a warm, safe place?" The girls didn't answer immediately. There wasn't the enthusiasm Logan expected. Instead, they looked at each other, serious, assessing. "What kind of place?" Hazel asked, cautiously. "My home," Logan replied. "I have a big apartment with empty rooms. You could stay there, at least for now. You'd have beds, food, clean clothes." "Why?" Marley asked, and there was genuine confusion in her voice. "Why would you help us?" The question caught Logan by surprise. Why? He hadn't stopped to think about it. It had been an impulse, a feeling, something he couldn't fully explain even to himself. Because you're children," he finally said. "And children should have a home, someone to take care of them. They shouldn't be working on construction sites or sleeping on park benches." The girls considered his words. Once again, they exchanged glances that seemed to contain entire conversations. "And what would you want in return?" Hazel asked, and there was a hardness in her voice that hit Logan like a punch. A hardness that said that, in her 7 years of life, she had already learned that nothing in the world was truly free. "Nothing," Logan replied, firmly. "Absolutely nothing in return. I just want to help. You can stay for as long as you need. If you don't like it, if you don't feel comfortable, you can leave whenever you want." The girls didn't seem convinced. Logan didn't blame them. At that moment, he realized they weren't asking for help. They were used to not having it, perhaps even used to not trusting, to not expecting anything from anyone. "Look," he said, leaning slightly over the table, "I understand you don't know me. You have no reason to trust me, but at least tonight, wouldn't you like to sleep in a real bed? Take a hot shower, have dinner at a table, just for tonight. Tomorrow, if you want to leave, I won't stop you." Hazel looked at Marley's bruised hands, then at her own. She looked at their dirty clothes, at the floor beneath their feet. When she looked back at Logan, there was something different in her eyes. Not hope, not yet, but perhaps the consideration that hope could exist. "Just for tonight," she finally said. "Just for tonight," Logan agreed, knowing it wasn't true, knowing that something fundamental had changed the moment he saw those two children carrying bricks, knowing he would never be the same. He called the waitress, paid the bill, and stood up. The girls followed him, still together, still cautious, but willing to take a step towards the unknown. When they left the diner, The afternoon sun was shining brightly. Logan looked at the two small figures beside him, dirty, bruised, tired, but somehow whole, somehow strong. "Let's go," he said, and extended his hands to them. After a moment of hesitation, each took one of his hands. Their hands were small, calloused, warm. Logan squeezed them gently, feeling the weight of this responsibility, this commitment he had just made. They began to walk down the sidewalk, towards a life none of them could have imagined that morning. Logan's apartment occupied the top 2 floors of one of the city's most elegant buildings. When the private elevator opened directly into the living room, Hazel and Marley froze at the entrance, unsure what to do. "You can come in," Logan said softly. "This is where I live." The girls took hesitant steps, as if treading on unfamiliar ground, and indeed they were. The wooden floor shone so brightly they could see their reflections in it. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a panoramic view of the city. Furniture that looked like it had never been used decorated the immense space. "It's very big," Marley whispered to her sister. But Logan heard, "Yes, it's too big for just one person," he replied with a small smile. "I'll show you where you'll be staying." He led them down a wide corridor to a room with 2 twin beds. The room, like the rest of the apartment, was minimalist but cozy. White walls, light blue sheets, a large window overlooking the city park. "This will be your room if you want it," Logan said. "The bathroom is that door there. It has clean towels, soap, shampoo, everything you need." The girls looked around with a mixture of fascination and distrust. They touched things carefully, as if afraid of breaking or dirtying them. "Would you like to take a shower? Then we can see what we have to eat." Hazel and Marley exchanged glances, then nodded. Logan showed them how the shower worked, adjusted the temperature, and left 2 soft towels on the sink. "I'll leave you to it. I'll be in the living room if you need anything." When Logan left, the girls remained motionless for a few seconds. Everything was so different from what they knew. The cleanliness, the space, the silence. "Do you think he's trustworthy?" Marley asked softly. Hazel shrugged. "I don't know, but we can leave if we have to." They entered the bathroom together, locked the door, and finally allowed themselves to breathe. Steam rose when Hazel turned on the shower. Hot water poured out in abundance, something they hadn't experienced in so long they had almost forgotten what it was like. Meanwhile, Logan pulled out his cell phone and made a call. "Tessa, it's Logan. I need you to come in tomorrow morning. Yes, I know it's your day off, but it's an emergency. I have 2 kids here. Yes, kids, twins, 7 years old. It's a long story. They need clothes, they need, well, everything. No, they're not my daughters. I found them today. They were alone, working on a construction site. Yes, I know it sounds crazy. I'll explain everything tomorrow. Just, please come and bring clothes, shoes, things that 7-year-old girls need." "Thank you, Tessa." He hung up and sat on the sofa, running his hands over his face. What was he doing? He had brought 2 unknown children into his home without thinking about the legal consequences, the responsibilities, anything but those eyes that seemed to know the world in a way no child should. About half an hour later, the girls reappeared. They were clean, their wet hair dripping over the same dirty clothes. They had no others. Their faces, without the layer of dirt, revealed delicate features, fair skin, and dark circles under their eyes, too deep for such small children. "Feel better?" Logan asked. They nodded. "Come on, let's see what's in the kitchen." The kitchen, like the rest of the apartment, was impeccable and seemed little used. Logan opened the refrigerator, finding only a few takeout containers, milk, eggs, and fruit. "I'm not much of a cook," he admitted, "but I can make sandwiches, or we can order something." "Sandwiches are fine," Hazel replied. Logan took out bread, cheese, ham, mayonnaise, and some vegetables. He put everything on the counter and began to prepare the sandwiches. To his surprise, Hazel approached. "Can I help?" "Of course," he replied, handing her the knife to spread the mayonnaise. Marley remained a little distant, observing everything with her attentive eyes. She noticed every detail: how Logan handled the food, how he organized things, how he looked at them when he thought they weren't noticing. They ate at the kitchen island, sitting on tall stools. The girls ate slowly, savoring each bite, even though they had already had lunch at the diner. Logan wondered how long it had been since they had eaten regularly. "Are you sleepy?" he asked when they finished. Hazel shook her head. "We usually go to sleep later." "Right. Well, we can watch a movie if you want." The idea of watching a movie seemed to intrigue the girls. Logan led them back to the living room, turned on the television and scrolled through the streaming menu. "Any preferences?" They exchanged confused glances. We don't watch much TV," Marley explained. "Oh," Logan said, feeling foolish. "Of course. Well, how about this one? It's about a family of superheroes." The girls settled onto the sofa, maintaining a safe distance from Logan. As the movie progressed, he watched them out of the corner of his eye. Their expressions shifted from tense to curious and eventually to interested. They didn't laugh at the funny parts, but their eyes widened during action scenes. When the movie ended, it was past 10 o'clock. "Time for bed," Logan announced. "I'll make up your beds for you." In the bedroom, he opened closets and took out clean sheets and blankets. The girls helped him make the beds, tucking in the corners with a precision that suggested they had done this before, perhaps in temporary shelters, perhaps in homes that didn't last. "There's a bathroom there," Logan pointed to the door. "I'm in the room at the end of the hall if you need anything during the night." The girls nodded but said nothing. "Good," Logan said, feeling awkward. "Good night then." "Good night," they replied in unison. Logan closed the door as he left, leaving it ajar so a little light from the hallway could enter. He went back to the living room, picked up his phone, and started making calls. He needed to talk to his lawyer. He needed to understand what he was doing, what the legal steps would be. But as he spoke about temporary guardianship and adoption processes, his mind kept returning to those two small figures lying in beds that probably felt too strange, in a place that was too quiet. It was around 3 in the morning when Logan woke to a scream. A sharp, frightened scream that cut through the silence of the apartment like shattered glass. He jumped out of bed and ran to the girls' room. Marley was sitting up, gasping, her eyes wide with terror. Hazel was hugging her, whispering words Logan couldn't hear. "What happened?" he asked from the doorway, trying not to scare them further. "Nightmare," Hazel replied, without taking her eyes off her sister. "She dreamed we were trapped." Logan slowly entered the room and sat on the edge of the opposite bed. "It's okay, Marley. You're safe here." Marley looked at him, then at her sister, then at the strange dark room. "It's too quiet," she said softly. "On the street there's noise. Here it's like the world has ended." Logan had never thought about it, how the silence he valued so much could be terrifying to someone accustomed to the constant noise of the streets. How the security of closed doors could feel like a prison to someone who had always had the sky as their roof. "Do you want me to leave some sound on?" he asked. "Jam music, perhaps?" Marley shook her head. "No, just the door open." "Of course," Logan agreed. "I'll leave all the doors open, and I'll stay here until you fall asleep again." He didn't know what else to say. He had no experience with children, much less with children who had lived what these two had lived. So he just stayed there, sitting on the edge of the bed, available, present. Gradually, Marley calmed down. Hazel continued to hug her, humming something so softly Logan could barely hear it. Was it a lullaby? A song that reminded them of their parents? He didn't know, but he felt a pang in his chest thinking about everything those girls had already lost. When they finally fell asleep again, Logan didn't return to his room. He took a blanket from the closet and settled into the armchair in the corner. He would stay there in case they had another nightmare. He would stay there because, in some way, he didn't fully understand. He felt it was where he was supposed to be. The next morning, Tessa arrived early, carrying several bags. Tessa had been Logan's person for everything for years, part housekeeper, part personal assistant, part friend. A practical woman in her 50s, with short grey hair and an efficiency that intimidated even the toughest executives. "Where are they?" was the first thing she asked upon entering. "Still asleep," Logan replied, his voice hoarse with fatigue. "They had a rough night." Tessa examined him with critical eyes. "You look terrible." "Thanks. I'll make coffee," she said, heading to the kitchen. "Meanwhile, tell me exactly what happened." Logan followed her, and as she prepared the coffee, he told her everything. The construction site, The girls carrying bricks, the conversation at the diner, the decision to bring them home. Tessa listened without interrupting. When he finished, she pushed a cup of coffee towards him. So you, a single man with no experience with children, decided to bring 2 street children home? Yes, without thinking about the legal, social, or emotional consequences. Yes, Tessa nodded slowly. Good, Logan blinked, surprised. Good. Yes, good. You finally did something impulsive that doesn't involve buying a company or an island. Something human. She took a sip of coffee. What do you plan to do now? I don't know, Logan admitted. I have a board meeting today. I can't miss it. I thought you could stay with them, help them get settled. I bought some clothes online last night. They should arrive today. And I called my lawyer to see what the legal options are. And long-term. Logan hesitated. I don't know. But I can't just put them back on the street, Tessa. No, you can't, she agreed. Well, let's take it one step at a time. I'll stay with them today. We'll establish a routine, see what they need. You take care of the legal stuff in your empire. At that moment, a small noise made them both turn. Hazel and Marley were standing at the kitchen entrance, observing the adults with their attentive and cautious eyes. Good morning, Logan said, trying to smile naturally. This is Tessa. She'll be with you today while I take care of some work things. Tessa approached and bent down slightly to be at the girl's height. Hello, Hazel and Marley. Logan told me about you. I'm happy to meet you. The girls didn't respond verbally, only nodded. Their eyes studied Tessa with an intensity that made her feel completely transparent. You must be hungry, she said, turning to the stove. How about pancakes for breakfast? As Tessa prepared the pancakes, Logan observed how the girls moved around the kitchen. Hazel identified the smell of cinnamon even before Tessa added it to the batter. Marley analyzed the new adult with such a keen eye that she seemed to read her soul. After breakfast, Logan needed to get ready to leave. He put on one of his expensive suits, grabbed his briefcase, checked emails on his phone, his normal routine, but something was different. He felt the girl's eyes following him, watching every movement. I'll be back late this afternoon, he said, stopping at the door. Tessa will take good care of you. Are you really coming back? Marley asked, and there was something in her voice, not accusation but genuine doubt, as if departures without return were common in her experience. I will, Logan promised, feeling the weight of that simple word. This is my home. And now it's yours too, for as long as you want to stay. The girls didn't smile, didn't show relief or gratitude. They just nodded, accepting the information, but clearly reserving judgment until they saw if the promise would be kept. As he drove to the office, Logan realized he was thinking about the girls every few minutes. How were they adapting? Would Tessa gain their trust? Would they be scared in a place so different from everything they knew? At the board meeting, the acquisition of a promising startup was being discussed. Logan would normally be completely focused, asking incisive questions, analyzing every detail. But today his mind was divided. Logan, what do you think? His CFO's question brought him back. Sorry, can you repeat the last part? His CFO looked surprised. Logan Hart never asked for anything to be repeated. He was always attentive, always 3 steps ahead of everyone in the room. The meeting continued, but Logan realized that something fundamental had changed. Time now had a different rhythm for him. It was no longer measured only in fiscal quarters and growth targets. It was measured in small moments. 2 girls having breakfast in his kitchen, a nightmare in the middle of the night, a promise to come home. When he finally returned to the apartment, it was already past 7 in the evening. He found Tessa in the living room, organizing some new clothes that had arrived. The girls were sitting on the floor, Hazel drawing in a sketchbook, Marley silently observing. How was your day? Logan asked, putting his briefcase on the sofa. Productive, Tessa replied. We bought some basic things, explored the apartment. Hazel has a talent for drawing, we discovered. Logan approached to see what Hazel was drawing. It was a portrait of Tessa, surprisingly detailed for a 7-year-old. That's amazing, Hazel. She didn't thank him, just kept drawing, but Logan noticed her shoulders relaxed a bit when she heard the compliment. After Tessa left, Promising to return the next morning, Logan tried to maintain a conversation during dinner. He asked what they had done during the day, if they liked their new clothes, if they needed anything else. The answers were short, precise, without apparent emotion, but he was beginning to notice small signs. How Hazel leaned slightly towards her sister when she felt insecure, how Marley watched the exits from the room, how both seemed to communicate through glances and small gestures. It wasn't coldness he saw in them, Logan realized. It was protection. It was the calluses that form over repeated wounds. They were children who had learned very early that the world was not safe, that adults leave, that promises are broken. Logan began to understand. They weren't cold. They were hardened. And as he watched them eating quietly at his too large table in his too quiet house, he felt a determination grow within him. These girls deserved more than just to survive. They deserved to live, to trust, perhaps even one day to believe that not all adults disappear, that not all homes are temporary. He didn't know how to make that happen. He didn't know if he was the right person to try, but he knew, with a certainty he had never felt before, that he was willing to try. 2 weeks had passed since Hazel and Marley arrived at Logan's apartment. 2 weeks of discoveries, adjustments, and learning for all three of them. The first time Logan took the girls clothes shopping was a revelation. The mall was enormous, full of lights, music, and people. The twins froze at the entrance, holding each other's hands so tightly their knuckles turned white. "We can leave if you want," Logan offered, noticing their discomfort. "No," Hazel replied after a few seconds. "We can do it." In the children's store, the sales associate smiled and approached, speaking loudly, asking questions. Marley hid behind her sister. Hazel remained still, eyes alert, like a small animal ready to flee. Logan realized his mistake and gestured for the sales associates to back off. "Hey, let's take it slow," he said to the girls. "Just look first, okay?" They nodded, grateful for his understanding. Gradually, they began to move through the store. Logan noticed how they touched the fabrics carefully, how they looked at the prices, even without fully understanding them, how they consulted each other before showing something they liked. "You can choose whatever you want," he said. "You need everything: pants, shirts, dresses, pajamas, coats, shoes." The girls looked at him distrustfully. "Everything?" Marley asked softly. "Everything," Logan confirmed. "And don't worry about the price." Even with this permission, the twins' choices were modest, simple, practical clothes, nothing flashy. When Logan suggested a more elegant dress, Hazel shook her head. "We don't need that." He didn't insist. He was learning not to force things, to respect their pace, to understand that every choice carried the weight of a life he was just beginning to comprehend. On the way back, they passed a toy store. Logan stopped at the display window. "Do you want to go in?" The girls exchanged glances, surprised by the question. "What for?" Hazel asked. The simplicity of the question caught Logan off guard. What for? Because children like toys, because playing is part of childhood, because it was normal. But normal for him wasn't normal for them. "To choose some toys," he replied. "Things for you to have fun with." The idea of fun seemed strange to the twins. On the street, there was no time for that. Every moment was dedicated to survival. "Could they be books?" Marley asked shyly. "Of course," Logan smiled. "Books are great, but we can also look at other things." The toy store was a new world for the girls. Their eyes widened at the amount of colors, shapes, and possibilities. Logan watched them with fascination, trying to imagine what it would be like to see all that for the first time. Hazel was drawn to a set of colored pencils and drawing pads. Marley stopped in front of a globe that lit up. "Do you like geography?" Logan asked her. Marley shrugged. "I don't know. But it's beautiful to see the whole world at once." The answer, so simple and profound, struck Logan in a way he didn't expect. Of course, a child who had lived on the streets, limited to a few safe blocks, would marvel at the idea of seeing the whole world. They left the store with the pencils and pads for Hazel, the globe for Marley, and also some children's books. 2 teddy bears, chosen by Logan, not them, a board game, and a 1,000-piece puzzle. At the apartment, the girls opened the bags carefully, as if the gifts might disappear at any moment. Marley turned on the globe, and watched the soft lights illuminate the continents. Hazel opened the set of pencils and touched each one, feeling the colors even before using them. "Thank you," she finally said, looking at Logan. It wasn't the first time they had thanked him, but there was something different this time, something more genuine, less automatic. "You're welcome," Logan replied, feeling a lump in his throat. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, Logan talked with Tessa in the kitchen. "They're adapting," Tessa said, putting away the clean dishes. "But they still have many scars." "Logan, scars we can't see." "I know," he sighed. "And today, at the mall, I noticed how tense they get with loud noises, with people approaching too quickly. Marley almost panicked when a security guard came up to ask if we needed help. Yesterday," Tessa continued, "I found Hazel putting pieces of bread in her pocket after lunch. When I asked her why, she said it was for later, in case the food runs out." Logan closed his eyes, feeling a pain he didn't know he was capable of feeling. The idea of children worrying about their next meal, of children who didn't believe that food would be there when they were hungry again. "What can I do, Tessa?" "What you're already doing," she replied. "Give them time. Safe time. Safe time." The words stayed with Logan long after Tessa left. It was something he had never needed in his life of privilege, the certainty that tomorrow would be as safe as today, that the ground wouldn't disappear beneath his feet, that the people who mattered would still be there. In the following days, Logan reorganized his priorities. He cancelled trips, rescheduled meetings, delegated tasks he once considered essential. His assistant at the office was perplexed by the change, but Logan offered no detailed explanations. How to explain that two small children had entered his life and turned everything upside down? At home, he learned to navigate the girls' needs, often by trial and error. He discovered that Marley woke up startled by the sound of thunder, clutching her sister, trembling. He discovered that Hazel became vigilant when strangers entered the apartment, always positioning herself between visitors and Marley. He discovered that both of them hid food, not just bread, but fruit, cookies, anything non-perishable, in different places in their room. He never mentioned these hiding places. He understood it was a form of control, of security. Instead, he began leaving small baskets of fruit and snacks in their room, easily accessible. "In case you get hungry during the night," he would say casually. One afternoon, Logan returned early from the office and found the living room in complete chaos. Cushions on the floor, books scattered, drawing papers everywhere. In the middle of this improbable scene, Hazel and Marley were building what looked like a fort, with sheets stretched between the sofa and the coffee table. His first instinct was irritation. The apartment had always been an example of minimalist organization, but then he heard something that was still rare, the sound of Marley's laughter, light and genuine. "What are we building here?" he asked, putting his briefcase on a chair. The girls started, their laughter vanishing instantly. "Sorry," Hazel said, already starting to pick things up. "We'll clean it all up." "No," Logan quickly said. "You don't have to clean it up. I just want to know if I can help." They looked at him, confused. "You're not mad?" Marley asked. "Why would I be mad?" "Because we made a mess." Logan looked around at what he would have previously considered an unacceptable invasion of his perfect order. Now he saw only signs of life, of presence, of children being children. "I'm not mad," he said, and realized it was true. "In fact, I think this fort needs a few more pillows. I can get some from my room." The relief on their faces was like a ray of sunshine after a storm. When Logan returned with the pillows, he found Hazel adjusting one of the sheets that served as the fort's roof. "It'll be more stable if you attach it here," he suggested, indicating the lamp beside the sofa. Together, the three worked on the fort's structure. Logan held up sheets, while Hazel gave instructions, and Marley organized the interior with cushions and pillows. "What are we going to do inside the fort?" he asked when they finished. "Georgia," Marley replied, picking up one of the books bought at the toy store. "We can read stories." They squeezed inside the fort. Logan bent in an uncomfortable position to fit in the space, the girls sitting cross-legged in front of him. Marley handed him the book, a collection of folk tales from various parts of the world. "Will you read?" she asked. "Of course," Logan agreed, opening the book. "Which story do you want to hear first?" Hazel pointed to a colorful illustration of a firebird, That one. Logan began to read, his voice filling the small, cozy space they had created together. He noticed how the girls gradually relaxed, how their shoulders dropped, how their eyes lost that constant vigilance. For a moment, they were just children listening to a story, safe inside their makeshift fort. When he finished the first story, he looked up and saw that Marley had fallen asleep, her head resting on a pillow, her face serene as it rarely was when she was awake. Hazel watched her with a protective gaze that Logan knew well. "She's asleep," Hazel whispered. "Yes," Logan whispered back. "Do you want me to read another one to you?" Hazel hesitated, then nodded. As he read the second story, Logan realized something important. He was happy. Not the kind of happiness he felt when closing a big deal or being recognized for his professional achievements. It was something simpler and, at the same time, more profound. Something that had to do with that makeshift fort, with the soft sound of Marley's sleeping breath, with Hazel's attentive eyes following every word he read. That night, when Tessa arrived to make dinner, she found all three of them still in the fort. Logan had fallen asleep too, a book open on his chest. The girls curled up on either side of him like kittens seeking warmth. Tessa didn't wake them. Instead, she took a picture with her phone, the first image of them together, the first tangible memory of this new, still unnamed, configuration. In the following days, Logan began to notice subtle changes in his own behavior. At the office, he found himself looking at his watch frequently, eager to get home. When his CFO told a joke, he laughed, something rare in the past. During a meeting with investors, he showed pictures of the girls building the fort, surprising everyone with this personal side he had never revealed before. "You're different," his oldest partner commented after a meeting. "Different how?" Logan asked. "I don't know, more human." Logan reflected on this as he drove home. He was different. He felt different. His life, once so organized and predictable, now had daily surprises, a drawing made especially for him, an unexpected question during dinner, a fort in the living room when he least expected it, and he loved it. At the apartment, he found the girls in the kitchen with Tessa, helping prepare dinner. Hazel chopped vegetables with absolute concentration. Marley counted the silverware to set the table. "I'm home," he announced, putting his briefcase on the counter. The girls looked at him. They didn't run to hug him, didn't shout with joy, they weren't at that stage yet. But there was something in their eyes, a glimmer of recognition, perhaps even satisfaction at seeing him. "Hi," Hazel said. "We're making pasta," Marley said. "Looks great," Logan replied, feeling a wave of... what? He had no name for this feeling. It was like belonging, like arriving at a place where he was expected, where his presence mattered. Later, after the girls had gone to bed, Logan sat in the living room, now tidied, but still with traces of the dismantled fort. He picked up one of Hazel's drawings left on the coffee table. It was a portrait of the three of them, Logan in the middle, Hazel and Marley on each side. They weren't holding hands in the drawing. They weren't smiling exaggeratedly like in typical children's illustrations. They were just together, side by side, under the same roof. Logan ran his fingers over the drawing, feeling the texture of the paper, the marks of the colored pencils. Something was happening inside him, something he hadn't planned, something he wasn't prepared for. He didn't know what to call this new feeling, but he knew what he felt. These girls mattered. They mattered more than any business, any contract, any figure in his bank account. He carefully put the drawing in his briefcase to take it to the office the next day. Her visible reminder that his life now had a different purpose, a different rhythm, a different meaning. The girls, invisible scars, were still there. The fear of sudden noises, the distrust of strangers, the hunger held in their eyes. Logan knew it would take time, perhaps years, for those scars to begin to fade. But now he understood that time was exactly what he could offer them. Safe time, predictable days, reliable routines, the certainty that the ground would not disappear beneath their feet. And in the process of offering that to them, he was receiving something equally valuable, the chance to be more than a successful businessman. The chance to be important in someone's life, not for what he possessed, but for what he could give. Not money or things, but presence, constancy, security. The girls were transforming Logan as much as he hoped to transform their lives. It was a silent, undeclared, but deeply meaningful exchange. He still didn't know where this journey would take them, but he knew there was no turning back. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't want to control the future, plan every step. He just wanted to be present, day after day, building something he never imagined he would desire: a family. It all started with a cough, small, dry, almost imperceptible. Logan only noticed because Marley tried to stifle it during dinner, covering her mouth with her hand and avoiding making noise. "Is everything all right?" he asked, seeing how she barely touched her food. "Yes," Marley replied quickly, but Hazel cast a worried glance at her sister. "She's been coughing since earlier today," Hazel said. "It's just a cough," Marley insisted, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. Logan didn't press. In recent weeks, he had learned that pressuring the girls rarely worked. Instead, he observed Marley more carefully for the rest of the evening. He noticed how she seemed quieter than usual, how her skin was paler, how she occasionally hunched as if feeling cold, despite the apartment being warm. When he put them to bed, he lightly touched Marley's forehead, as if by chance. It was warm, not alarming, but definitely warmer than normal. Then, "If you feel anything during the night, call me, okay?" he said, trying to sound casual. Marley nodded, already snuggling under the covers. Hazel remained seated on her own bed, vigilant, watching her sister with eyes that seemed to calculate risks, evaluate dangers. Logan hesitated at the door, reluctant to leave. There was something in Hazel's expression that made him uneasy. "Hazel, is there anything I should know?" The girl was silent for a moment, torn between loyalty to her sister and growing concern. "She gets sick sometimes," Hazel finally said in a low voice. In her chest, it gets hard to breathe. Logan's heart clenched. "Asthma?" Hazel shrugged. "We don't know the name, but she went to the hospital once before their parents died, before the streets, before everything." "I'll keep an eye on her," Logan promised. "If it gets worse, let me know immediately, no matter the time." It was at 3 in the morning that Logan woke to Hazel standing beside his bed, a small figure in the dim light of the room. "It's Marley," she said, and there was urgency in her usually controlled voice. "She can't breathe properly." Logan jumped out of bed and rushed to the girl's room. Marley was sitting up, gasping for air, her face red and sweaty, her eyes frightened. Each breath seemed to require enormous effort, producing a sharp wheezing sound that Logan could hear even from the doorway. "Thais, we're going to the hospital," he said without hesitation. There were no protests. Logan picked Marley up. She was burning with fever now, while Hazel already put on her shoes and grabbed a coat. "I'll call the driver," Logan said, grabbing his phone. "We don't have time," Hazel replied, with a certainty that left no room for discussion. "She needs to go now." Logan didn't question. Carrying Marley, he went down with the girls to the building's garage, put them in his car, and drove through the sleeping city as if his life depended on it. In the back seat, Hazel held her sister's hand, whispering words Logan couldn't hear. The hospital was silent when they arrived. In the emergency room, a nurse quickly assessed Marley and took her inside, leaving Logan and Hazel in the waiting room. "She'll be fine," Logan said, trying to sound confident. Hazel looked at him with eyes that seemed much older than her 7 years. "You don't know that," she was right. He didn't know. He didn't know Marley's medical history. He didn't know what had happened the other times. He didn't know which treatments worked and which didn't. They sat side by side in the plastic chairs. Logan tried to fill out the admission form, but there were so many blanks: exact date of birth, medical history, allergies, information that parents normally know about their children. "Her birthday's the same day as mine," Hazel said, looking at the form. "March 15th. "And do you have any allergies that you know of?" Hazel shook her head. "I don't think so. But Marley always gets sick in the winter, in her chest." Logan wrote everything down, small pieces of a puzzle that still had many missing parts. An hour passed. Then 2. Hazel remained awake, her eyes fixed on the door through which Marley had disappeared. She didn't cry, didn't complain, just waited with a patience that 7-year-old children normally don't possess. Finally, a doctor appeared. "Mr. Hart, I'm Dr. Chen. I'm taking care of Marley." Logan stood up, with Hazel immediately by his side. "How is she?" "Stable now. She had a severe asthma attack, complicated by a respiratory infection. Her fever is controlled, and we're treating the infection with antibiotics. She'll need to stay hospitalized for at least 24 hours for observation." "Can we see her?" Hazel asked, her voice small but firm. The doctor smiled at her. "Yes, of course. She's asking for you." They followed the doctor down quiet corridors to a room where Marley lay in a bed that seemed too large for her small body. She had a heart monitor connected to her finger and an oxygen mask over her face, but her eyes lit up when she saw her sister and Logan. Hazel ran to the bedside, holding Marley's free hand. She said nothing. She didn't need to. The communication between them went beyond words. "I'll leave you for a bit," Dr. Chen said. "Press the button if you need anything." When the doctor left, Logan pulled up a chair next to the bed. "How are you feeling, Marley?" She made a small gesture with her hand, as if to say, so-so. Her eyes, however, seemed calmer, the initial fear replaced by fatigue. "You need to rest," Logan said. "We'll stay here with you." Marley nodded slightly and closed her eyes. Her breathing, still aided by oxygen, seemed easier now. The early morning hours passed slowly. Logan stayed in the chair, watching the girls. Hazel had climbed into the bed beside her sister, careful not to touch any tubes or wires. Eventually, both fell asleep, Hazel with a protective arm over Marley, even in sleep maintaining her guard. In the silence of the hospital room, lit only by the faint glow of the monitors, Logan watched the two, so small in the big bed, so vulnerable and ear at the same time, so strong together. The connection between them was palpable, something forged not just by blood ties, but by shared experiences, by pains lived side by side, by a mutual understanding that went beyond words. They were just children, but they had already built something that many adults never achieved. An unbreakable bond, absolute loyalty, an understanding that needed no explanations. Logan felt a wave of emotion so intense that he had to look away for a moment. When he looked back at the girls, a realization hit him with full force. They already had a world of their own, a world built between the two of them, a world that survived the streets, hunger, abandonment. They didn't need him to create something new for them. They just needed a safe place to shelter the world they had already created. A roof, walls, warmth, food, security, basic things that should never have been denied to them. And perhaps, with time, with patience, they would let him into that world too. Not to change it or control it, but to be a part of it, to add him to the perfect equation that already existed between them. The nurse came in to check Marley's vital signs, moving silently so as not to wake the girls. She wrote something on the chart and smiled at Logan. "Beautiful family," she commented softly. Logan didn't correct her. Family. The word echoed in his mind, foreign and at the same time, strangely right. When the nurse left, he went back to observing the sleeping twins. Hazel had unconsciously moved closer to her sister, as if even in sleep she needed to be sure Marley was okay, was there, was breathing. Logan thought of all the nights they must have spent like this, alone protecting each other, with no one to protect them both. The idea physically hurt him. "Never again," he whispered in the almost empty room. "You will never be alone again." It was a promise, to them, to himself, to the universe that had put these children in his path. A promise he knew would change his life forever, and one he didn't regret for a second. The sun began to rise, sending the first rays through the hospital window. A new day. The beginning of something Logan still didn't fully understand, but which he felt with absolute certainty. They already had a world. Now they would have a home to shelter it. 3 days later, Marley was discharged from the hospital. The scare had passed, but it left its marks, not only in the medical recommendations Logan carefully kept, but in the dynamic between the three of them. Something had changed during those nights at the hospital. An invisible barrier had fallen. Perhaps it was shared fear, perhaps revealed vulnerability, or simply the time spent together in a moment of crisis. Whatever it was, Logan felt they had crossed an important threshold. Back at the apartment, they established a new routine. Marley needed to use an inhaler twice a day and take antibiotics for another week. Logan rearranged his work schedule to be present for every dose, every meal, every important moment. One quiet afternoon, while Marley rested on the sofa, leafing through an atlas Logan had bought, Hazel approached him in the kitchen. She was serious, as she always was when she had something important to say. "Logan," she began, using his name, something that still sounded formal in her voice, but which was a step forward from the first few days when she barely called him anything. "Are we going to study one day?" The question caught him off guard. Amidst all the concerns about health, safety, and basic well-being, formal education had not been his immediate priority. "Do you want to study, go to school?" Hazel nodded, her eyes revealing an intensity Logan knew well. "We know how to read a little. Mom taught us before she left, but there's a lot we don't know." Logan sat at the kitchen table and gestured for Hazel to sit too. She obeyed, placing her small hands on the polished surface of the table. Would you like to go to school, both of you?" "Yes," Hazel replied without hesitation. Marley wanted to be a doctor when she was younger, after what happened to Mom, and doctors need to study a lot. The simplicity of the declaration, the clarity of the childhood dream that survived even the streets, hit Logan like a punch. These girls hadn't just lost a roof, food, security. They had lost access to the future that all children deserve to imagine for themselves. "And you?" he asked. "What would you like to be?" Hazel shrugged, as if she had never really considered the question. "I don't know, but I want to learn everything, to be able to take care of Marley better. Always her sister first. Always the protector role." "I'll arrange that," Logan promised. "I'll research schools, see what's needed to enroll you." Hazel's eyes lit up in a way he rarely saw. "When?" "I'll start today." That night, after the girls had gone to bed, Logan began his research. He quickly realized that the situation was more complicated than he imagined. To enroll the girls in a school, he would need documents, birth certificates, vaccination records, proof of previous residence, school transcripts, documents that possibly didn't exist or, if they did, were inaccessible. Logan called his lawyer, waking him despite the late hour. "Michael, I need your help with a delicate matter." He explained the situation, the girls, their story, the lack of documentation. "Logan," Michael replied after a long silence, "do you realize the legal situation you've put yourself in? You have 2 children of unknown origin living in your home without any legal guardianship. This could be interpreted as—" "I know exactly how it can be interpreted," Logan interrupted him. "But I don't regret it. They needed help. I helped. Now I need to legalize the situation so they can study, have access to healthcare, have a normal life. It's going to be a long and complicated process. First, we need to find any official records for them, find out if they were registered at birth, if they attended any school, if they have other living relatives. Then, we need to determine their current legal status and request temporary guardianship for you while the process runs." "How long will that take?" "Months, in the best-case scenario. Maybe years." Logan closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the bureaucracy, of the laws created to protect children who, in this specific case, could end up harming them. What about school? They can't wait years. There are alternative schools, homeschooling programs, temporary options until we legalize the situation. I'll research and send you some options tomorrow." When he hung up, Logan remained in the dark living room thinking. Hazel's simple question had opened a door to a future he hadn't fully considered yet, a future where the girls would grow up, learn, develop their own dreams and ambitions, a future that went far beyond the next day, the next meal. For the first time, Logan allowed himself to envision this future in concrete detail. Hazel and Marley in school uniforms, carrying backpacks. Marley growing up, perhaps really becoming a doctor one day. Hazel discovering what she wanted beyond protecting her sister. Both of them developing friendships, participating in activities, having a normal childhood, or as normal as possible, considering everything they had already been through. It was a future he desperately wanted for them, and he was willing to face any bureaucracy, any system, to make it a reality. In the following days, Logan immersed himself in research and meetings. He visited private schools where the lack of documentation could be temporarily circumvented. He spoke with homeschooling specialists. He hired tutors to assess the girls' current educational level. The assessment revealed what he already suspected. Despite being able to read at a basic level, they had large gaps in their education. Years on the streets had stolen from them the classroom time that other children took for granted. While waiting for the legal processes to move forward, Logan transformed one of the rooms in his apartment into a study space. He filled shelves with textbooks, storybooks, encyclopedias, atlases. He bought a whiteboard, comfortable desks, all kinds of school supplies. On the first day with the tutor, a young teacher named Eleanor, the girls entered the study room with a mixture of nervousness and fascination. "Is all this for us?" Marley asked, looking at the colorful books. "Everything," Logan confirmed. "Elena will help you learn, so that when you enter school you'll be prepared." The first few weeks of study were a revelation for everyone. Logan, whenever possible, attended the lessons, observing how the girls absorbed knowledge with an eagerness that surprised even Elena. "They have an incredible capacity for concentration," the tutor commented one day. "Especially Hazel. I've never seen a child so determined to learn." But there were challenges too. Sometimes Marley would get frustrated with mathematical calculations and retreat into stubborn silence. Hazel occasionally got irritated when she couldn't understand a concept immediately, as if failing was not an option. It was during one of these difficult moments that Logan discovered the power of books, not textbooks, but storybooks. Marley had spent a particularly frustrating morning trying to understand fractions. After lunch, she refused to go back to the study room, hiding in her bedroom. Hazel, torn between her own lesson and concern for her sister, was visibly tense. Logan asked Elena to take a break and went to the girls' room, where he found Marley curled up on the bed, looking out the window. "Can I come in?" he asked gently. She shrugged, without looking at him. Logan sat on the edge of the bed. "Math can be tough." "I'm dumb," Marley murmured. "No, you're not," Logan replied, firm but gentle. "You're extremely intelligent. You're just learning something new, something you never had the chance to learn before." Marley continued looking out the window, inconsolable. Logan looked around the room, searching for something that might help. His eyes landed on the small bookshelf in the corner. He stood up, picked up a thin, colorful volume, and returned to the bed. "Hi, how about a story break?" The book was about a girl who discovered a secret garden. Logan began to read, his calm voice filling the room. Gradually, Marley turned to look at the illustrations. After a few minutes, Hazel appeared at the door, drawn by the story. Logan gestured for her to join them. The three sat on the bed, absorbed by the world created by the words. When Logan finished the first chapter, Marley was completely engrossed. "Will she be able to make the garden grow again?" she asked, her eyes now sparkling with curiosity. "We'll have to read the rest to find out," Logan smiled. "But you know what's interesting? To take care of a garden, you need to understand a little bit of math." "How so?" Hazel asked. "Well, you need to measure the space between plants, calculate how much fertilizer to use, divide the seeds." Marley's face showed understanding. "Like fractions. Exactly like fractions." After that day, books became an essential part of their routine, not just as learning tools, but as bridges between worlds, as comfort in difficult moments, as safe spaces where they could explore emotions without feeling vulnerable. Logan read to them every night before bed. They started with simple stories, then moved on to children's classics, each book opening new horizons, new possibilities. "Can we visit a library one day?" Hazel asked after finishing a book about a girl who loved to read. "Of course," Logan replied. "There's a wonderful children's library downtown." The library visit was a milestone. The girls walked among the tall shelves with the same respect some people reserve for temples. When the librarian explained that they could take books home, borrow, read, return, get more, Their eyes widened at the possibility. "How many can we take?" Marley asked. "3 each, to start," the librarian smiled. They took their book selection very seriously, spending hours comparing options, reading first pages, discussing among themselves in whispers. Logan watched them from afar, marveling at the transformation. These were the same girls who, months ago, were carrying bricks on a construction site. The legal process took its slow course. Michael, the lawyer, had managed to locate the girls' birth certificates and confirm that there were no living close relatives. Their parents, as the girls had said, were dead, their mother from illness, their father in an accident shortly after. There were no grandparents, aunts, uncles, or other family members who could claim them. "We're making progress," Michael said during one of their meetings. "I've secured a preliminary hearing with the family court judge for next month. We'll officially request temporary guardianship." "And after that," Logan asked, "if all goes well, you'll have temporary legal guardianship. Then we can start the adoption process, if that's what you want." The word hung in the air. Adoption. Permanent. Forever. Logan didn't answer immediately. It was a huge step, a lifelong responsibility. Was he ready? Was it the best for the girls? One Saturday morning, a few weeks later, Logan woke later than usual. The house was silent, but not in the empty way it used to be. It was a comfortable, inhabited silence. As he entered the living room, he found a scene that would forever be etched in his memory. Hazel was asleep on the sofa, a book open on her chest, her face serene as it rarely was when awake. In the corner of the room, near the window, Marley played with the globe he had bought, slowly spinning it and laughing to herself when she found difficult-to-pronounce place names. The morning light streamed through the windows, creating an almost unreal picture of domestic peace. Logan stopped at the entrance, not wanting to break the moment. It was then that he felt it, a tightening in his chest, different from anything he had ever experienced. It wasn't pain, it wasn't anxiety. It was something good, full, complete, something that had no name, but which he immediately recognized as right. And in the midst of that feeling, an idea emerged, clear, simple, obvious. What if they stayed with me? For real. The idea of adoption came without warning, like a lightning bolt in a clear sky. For a moment it startled him with its force, with its implications. He, Logan Hart, a man who had always lived for work, for achievements, for the next big deal, a father to 2 girls, responsible not just for feeding and temporarily sheltering them, but for raising them, guiding them into adulthood. Marley noticed his presence and smiled, one of those rare and precious smiles that was still a victory whenever they appeared. "Look, Logan, I found where we are," she said, pointing to a spot on the globe. He approached, knelt beside her, and looked where her small finger pointed. "Yes, that's exactly where we are," he confirmed. Marley slowly spun the globe, "And there are so many places we've never seen." "Maybe one day you will," Logan replied. "We can travel, visit other countries, other cultures." "We?" Marley asked, her eyes fixed on him, seeking confirmation of something she barely dared to hope for. "Yes," Logan said, and at that moment he knew it was already decided. "Us. Together." Marley's smile widened, and she resumed spinning the globe, now pointing to distant places and asking, "Can we go here and here?" Logan answered every question, while in his mind he was already outlining the next steps. He would call Michael today. He would accelerate the process. He would do whatever it took, the possible and the impossible. Because those girls who had entered his life by chance were now his world, and he wanted to be theirs, not temporarily, not as a provisional solution, but forever. Family. The word that once sounded strange now seemed the only possible one. The family court was imposing, with marble columns and seemingly endless staircases. Logan, in his most formal suit, climbed the steps with determination. Beside him, Michael, his lawyer, carried a briefcase full of carefully organized documents. "Judge Peterson is known for being extremely strict in adoption cases," Michael commented quietly. "Don't be intimidated by his questions." The girls had stayed home with Tessa. This initial hearing was for adults only, a decision Logan contested, but ultimately accepted after Michael explained it was standard procedure. The courtroom was austere, dominated by a heavy wooden table where Judge Peterson, a man in his 60s with short grey hair and thin-rimmed glasses, examined documents with a severe expression. Mr. Hartaup, the judge began after the initial formalities, I am reviewing your petition to adopt Hazel and Marley Lewis, 7-year-old twins, correct? Yes, Your Honor. I must observe that the circumstances of this case are unusual. You found these children at a construction site and took them into your residence without immediately notifying the authorities. This does not follow established protocol. Logan felt his stomach clench. Put that way, his actions seemed reckless, even suspicious. Your Honor, I acknowledge that I did not follow proper procedures initially. The girls were in imminent danger, malnourished, working illegally, unsupervised. My primary concern was to ensure their basic safety and well-being. Understandable, but problematic from a legal standpoint, the judge replied, leafing through more documents. I also see that you are single, have never been married, with no prior children or any significant experience with children. Correct? Yes, Your Honor. And until recently, you routinely worked over 70 hours a week as CEO of Heart Technologies. I have significantly reduced my working hours. I currently work about 40 hours a week, with a flexible schedule that allows me to be present for the girls. The judge studied him over his glasses. Mr. Hart, raising a child is an immense responsibility. Raising two, especially children, who have suffered significant trauma, is exponentially more challenging. The court needs to be absolutely certain that you understand the commitment you're making. I understand perfectly, Your Honor. In the last 6 months, furthermore, the judge interrupted him, there is the problem of incomplete documentation. Although we have managed to locate the birth certificates, many medical and educational records are missing. That's because they lived on the streets after their parents died, Logan explained, maintaining his composure despite growing frustration. They didn't attend school regularly. They didn't receive proper medical care. These gaps in documentation are a consequence of the circumstances, not a reason to deny them a permanent home now. The judge rested his elbows on the table, lacing his fingers. Mr. Hartit, I must consider all available options for these children. What options would those be exactly? Logan asked, feeling a chill run down his spine. One possibility would be to place them temporarily in separate foster homes, with families experienced in raising traumatized children, while we more deeply assess their situation. Separate? Logan couldn't hide his shock. Your Honor, that would be devastating for them. Hazel and Marley have an extraordinary connection. Separating the two, even temporarily, would cause completely unnecessary additional trauma. Finding a home that can accommodate two children is not always simple, the judge explained with clinical coolness. Sometimes, difficult decisions are necessary to, with all due respect, Logan interrupted, then quickly corrected himself. Forgive me, Your Honor, but I must insist that separating Hazel and Marley would be detrimental to their development. They have already lost their parents. The only constant in their lives has been each other. The judge closed the folder in front of him, his face unreadable. I will consider all aspects of this case carefully. Meanwhile, I will request additional visits from social workers to your residence and interviews with the girls. We need a full assessment before any permanent decision. The hearing ended on this note of uncertainty. On the way home, Logan's mind was fixed on a single word: separated. The idea was unbearable. When he arrived at the apartment, he immediately noticed that something was wrong. Hazel was sitting alone on the sofa, her hands clasped in her lap, her eyes red. Tessa appeared from the kitchen with a worried expression. What happened? Logan asked, feeling his heart tighten. Hazel overheard part of my phone conversation with your secretary, Tessa explained quietly. About the hearing and the possible complications. Where's Marley? In her room. Hazel insisted she wanted to talk to you first. Logan sat next to Hazel, maintaining a small distance, respecting her space as he always did. Hazel? What did you hear? The girl didn't look at him when she replied, her voice small but controlled. Are we leaving? 3 simple words that contained a universe of fear. Logan took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "No," he replied firmly, "never again." But the judge said, "The judge needs to be sure this is the best place for you. It's his job to ask difficult questions, to check everything. There will be more visits, more conversations, but in the end, he'll understand what I already know, that we should stay together." Hazel finally looked at him, her eyes searching for any sign of uncertainty. "Promise." Logan knew he shouldn't make promises. He wasn't absolutely sure he could keep. But in this case, his determination was unwavering. "I promise, Hazel. I'll do whatever it takes for us to stay together." In the following months, Logan dedicated himself entirely to the adoption process. He further reduced his hours at the office, delegated responsibilities he previously considered non-transferable, cancelled business trips. His absolute priority became proving to the court that he could and should be Hazel and Marley's father. He hired additional family law specialists to strengthen his case. He meticulously documented the girls' routine, their educational progress with tutors, their emotional development. He invited social workers not only for formal visits, but for everyday moments that demonstrated the genuine connection they had formed. When the social worker asked Marley, during a private interview, how she felt living with Logan, the girl's answer was simple: safe. A single word that was worth more than 1,000 legal arguments. The process dragged on for months. There were advances and setbacks, hopes and disappointments. The judge remained skeptical, raising new questions at each hearing, but Logan remained unwavering in his determination. After a particularly difficult hearing, where the judge again suggested the possibility of more traditional accommodations for the girls, Logan arrived home exhausted. He found Hazel and Marley sitting on the living room floor, drawing intently. "What are you doing?" as he asked, trying to sound normal despite his tiredness. "A drawing for the judge," Marley replied without looking up from her paper. "So he can see that we want to stay with you." Logan sat on the floor beside them, feeling an emotion so intense that he had difficulty speaking. "Can I see?" Marley turned the paper towards him. It was a simple drawing, done with colored pencils, 3 figures holding hands, 1 large and 2 small, in front of a house. At the top, in careful letters, it was written, "Our family." At the next hearing, it was the first thing Logan presented to the judge. "Your Honor, before we begin, I would like you to see this." The judge studied the drawing in silence, his normally severe face softening almost imperceptibly. "Mr. Hart, I have asked particularly difficult questions in this case," he finally said. "Do you know why? To protect Hazel and Marley, I imagine." "Yes, but also to test your determination. Raising children who have been through significant trauma is not easy. I wanted to make sure you wouldn't give up when things got tough. I will never give up on them, Your Honor." The judge nodded slowly. "I believe you. And based on all the evidence presented, the social workers and reports, and, yes, this drawing, I am ready to make my decision." 3 weeks later, Logan was again in court, this time with Hazel and Marley by his side, all 3 dressed formally. The girls were nervous, but determined. "Hazel and Marley," the judge said, looking directly at them, "I have only one question for you. Do you want Logan Hart to legally become your father?" The girls looked at each other, then at Logan, and finally at the judge. "Yes," they replied in unison, their voices small but firm. The judge smiled, for the first time in the entire process, and signed the document in front of him. "Therefore, by order of this court, I declare the adoption process concluded. Hazel and Marley, you are now, legally and officially, Hazel Hart and Marley Hart." At home, Tessa had prepared a small celebration. On the living room table, 2 carefully wrapped packages waited for the girls. They unwrapped the packages to find school uniforms, grey pleated skirts, white blouses, navy blue sweaters, with the Westlake Academy emblem embroidered on the chest. Logan picked up the uniforms, holding them carefully. "You've been accepted at Westlake. It's one of the best schools in the city. You start tomorrow." Hazel looked at the uniform, then at Logan, her eyes wide. "Are we really going to school?" she whispered, as if she feared that saying the words aloud might make the possibility disappear. Yes, tomorrow. The next morning, Logan took them to school, dressed in their new uniforms, carrying backpacks they had carefully chosen, purple for Hazel, green for Marley. They walked with a mixture of nervousness and excitement. At the school gate, Logan knelt to be at their height. "Are you ready?" They nodded, holding their backpack straps tightly. "I'll be here to pick you up after class," he promised. To his surprise, both hugged him briefly before turning and walking together to their first class. Back at the apartment, now truly a home, Logan found the girls pasting colorful signs with their new names on their bedroom doors. Hazel Heart, decorated with stars. Marley Heart, adorned with small planets. On the refrigerator, held by colorful magnets, was a new drawing. Another portrait of the three of them, but this time inside the house, each with a smile on their face. At the top, in colorful letters, the words that summarized everything: "Family is when no one is afraid." Logan traced the letters with his fingers, feeling a peace he had never known before. The girls were right, as they always were, about the really important things. Family was not just a legal document or sharing a name. It was creating a space where fear had no place, where two girls who knew fear better than any child should, and a man who had never allowed himself to be truly vulnerable could, together, find something none of them had truly had before: a home, a family, a place to belong. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like, because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.